layers and layers and layers of information are coming out, not just because objects are being examined in detail can be applied to them.
Was the mask created for Tutankhamun or for someone else?
For 3 pounds of solid gold. Obsidian eyes that seem to track you across the room. The most recognizable object in the ancient world, sitting behind bulletproof glass in Cairo, stared at by millions of people every single year. And according to a growing body of researchers, every single one of those people has been looking at the wrong name. Because when scientists applied new imaging technology to the surface of King Tutankhamun's burial mass, they found something that had no business being there. Evidence buried beneath the gold itself that the mask was altered. That a name was destroyed. That the face the world has celebrated for a century as the ultimate symbol of ancient Egypt may have originally been made for someone else entirely. Someone who was erased from history so completely that her tomb has never been found. Her mummy has never been identified. She simply vanishes from the record at a very specific, very suspicious moment in time. This is the story of what the scans found, what the clues have always been telling us, and why the answer points to the most powerful and most dangerous woman in the history of ancient Egypt. If you're into deep dives like this one, hit subscribe and drop a like before we go any further. Tell us in the comment what you already know about King Tut's mask, and whether you think the official story holds up. Now, let's get into it. November 4th, 1922. A young water boy working for British archaeologist Howard Carter's excavation team strikes something solid in the sand of the Valley of the Kings. A stone step. Then another. Then a sealed doorway. Carter spent 3 weeks clearing the staircase, documenting everything, waiting for his Egyptian Antiquities Service permits and his financial backer, Lord Carnarvon, to arrive from England before he opened anything. When the moment finally came, Carter chiseled a small hole in the upper corner of the sealed door, held a candle into the darkness, and peered through. Carnarvon, standing behind him, asked if he could see anything. Carter's answer became one of the most quoted lines in the history of archaeology. Yes, wonderful things. What they found inside was unlike anything uncovered before or since. 4 rooms packed with over 5,000 objects, golden chariots, alabaster vessels, jeweled throne chairs, painted statues, ritual beds, bows, wine jars, and nested coffins of extraordinary craftsmanship. The tomb had sat sealed for more than 3,000 years, largely undisturbed since the priests locked it and walked away sometime around 1323 BCE. But the object that stopped the world was found in the innermost chamber, inside the innermost of 3 nested coffins, lying directly over the mummy's head, the golden death mask. It measures roughly 21 inches tall. It weighs just over 10 kilograms. The face and headdress are cast from solid gold with inlays of lapis lazuli, quartz, obsidian, and colored glass. The eyes are particularly striking, slightly asymmetrical, framed in deep blue with a quality that photographers have described for a century as alive in a way that flat gold has no right to be. The ancient Egyptians believed gold was the physical substance of divine beings. This mask was not decorative. It was functional sacred technology designed to allow the pharaoh's soul to recognize and return to its own body during the journey through the underworld. Without it, the spirit was believed to wander lost for eternity. On the back and shoulders, priests had inscribed a protective spell from the Book of the Dead, a divine guardian for the passage into darkness. For almost 100 years, the world accepted this as a masterpiece created specifically for Tutankhamun, the boy who became pharaoh around age 9 and died unexpectedly at approximately 19, the perfect symbol of a lost dynasty, the golden face of ancient Egypt. But almost from the beginning, certain researchers kept noticing details that didn't quite fit. The first problem is time. When Tutankhamun died, probably from complications following a badly broken leg, Egyptian religious law was absolute on one point. A pharaoh had to be mummified, prepared, and interred within 70 days, not 69, not 71. 70 governed by the cycle of the star Sirius and the religious calendar that structured every aspect of Egyptian royal death ritual. 70 days. Sounds like a long time until you start listing what had to happen inside it. The tomb itself had to be prepared. For a pharaoh, that meant carving chambers out of solid limestone, plastering the walls, commissioning painted decoration, and cutting corridors. It meant manufacturing or gathering thousands of burial objects. It meant constructing 3 elaborately decorated coffins designed to nest precisely inside each other. And it meant creating the burial mask from scratch. Tutankhamun's death appears to have been completely unexpected. There is no evidence of long-term tomb preparation equivalent to what other pharaohs received. And when researchers examined his tomb carefully, the signs of a rushed burial were everywhere. The tomb is unusually small, embarrassingly small compared to the burial chambers of other pharaohs of similar or lesser status. Parts of the wall paintings appear hastily finished, with details missing that appear in comparable scenes elsewhere in the valley. The massive stone sarcophagus shows damage to its corners, consistent with workers having to force it into a space that was barely large enough. Some researchers have suggested the tomb may have originally been prepared for a non-royal official and was repurposed for the king when nothing better was ready in time. And the objects inside? Many of them were not made for Tutankhamun. Statues bear faces that don't match his known portraits. Jewelry was designed for a female body. Inscriptions on some coffins and artifacts showed signs of being modified, original names scraped away and recarved. Then researchers looked carefully at the mask again. The ears are pierced. In ancient Egyptian art and burial practice, this was not a minor detail. Pierced ears in royal portraiture were associated with children and with women. An adult male pharaoh, depicted on his sacred burial mask with pierced earlobes, was, in the context of everything Egyptians believed about kingship and the passage into the afterlife, a serious violation of established convention. Both lobes are pierced, and they are slightly different shapes from each other, a detail that suggests they were not carved simultaneously as part of a unified design. Researchers also noted that the gold on the face has a subtly different coloration from the gold of the headdress. Under certain lighting conditions, a faint difference in tone is visible, with the facial area reading slightly warmer. If the entire mask had been cast from the same batch of gold at the same time, this variation shouldn't exist. Taken individually, each of these anomalies has an explanation. Taken together, they point somewhere specific. Her name was Nefertiti. You have almost certainly seen her face. The famous painted limestone bust, discovered in 1912 in the ruins of a sculptor's workshop, shows a woman with a long, elegant neck, a crown-shaped blue headdress, and an expression that manages to be simultaneously serene and completely commanding. It has been called one of the most copied works of art in history. Nefertiti was the principal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, the ruler who attempted to overturn thousands of years of Egyptian religion by declaring that only one god, the sun disk, Aten, deserved worship. Akhenaten dismantled the traditional priesthood, moved the capital to a new city built from scratch in the desert, and ruled in a way that most of the Egyptian establishment found somewhere between disturbing and catastrophic. Nefertiti was not a passive figure in any of this. She appears in royal art with a frequency and prominence almost unmatched by any Egyptian queen before her. She is depicted performing rituals usually reserved for pharaohs. She is shown on temple reliefs smiting Egypt's enemies, a pose exclusively associated with ruling kings. When Akhenaten died, something strange happened. There is a brief period in the historical record where an individual called Neferneferuaten appears to have ruled Egypt as pharaoh. The name is connected to Nefertiti. Some Egyptologists now believe, based on inscription evidence, that Nefertiti did not simply retire or die when her husband did. She took the throne herself under a new royal name, ruling as pharaoh before being eventually succeeded by the boy who would become Tutankhamun. And then she vanishes. No confirmed burial, no identified mummy, no tomb. She disappears from the historical record at a point that aligns precisely with Tutankhamun's rise to power. It is as if someone removed her deliberately from the official story, erasing the reign of a female pharaoh who had the wrong religion and the wrong politics at the wrong moment. Her tomb has been one of Egyptology's most sought-after missing pieces for over a century. And the question that certain researchers keep returning to is this: if Nefertiti died before Tutankhamun, and if she had a burial mask prepared as a pharaoh she certainly would have, and if Tut's priests were racing a 70-day deadline with no mask ready for their king, what would they have done? In 2014, the question moved from theory to evidence when an accident at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo gave scientists an unexpected opportunity. During routine maintenance, the braided ceremonial beard attached to the bottom of the mask was knocked loose and broke off. It is a separate piece attached to the main mask with a wooden dowel, and the joint had apparently become fragile over time. What happened next became an international story. Instead of immediately calling in specialists, conservators, museum staff under pressure to restore the mask quickly used epoxy, adhesive, and industrial-strength modern glue to reattach the beard. When photographs emerged showing visible glue smeared around the golden chin of one of the world's most important artifacts, the international reaction was swift and harsh. Egyptian authorities brought in a team of conservation specialists to assess and properly repair the damage. The team, led by experts in ancient metalwork, used beeswax for the reattachment, a material consistent with ancient Egyptian practice and reversible in a way that epoxy was not. But before the repair was completed, the team scanned the mask using X-ray fluorescence technology, a non-invasive method that can reveal the chemical composition of metal surfaces and detect variations in alloy, solder joints, or repairs. The XRF results, when published, appeared to settle the debate. The gold composition of the face matched the gold of the headdress. The hieroglyphic inscription, spelling out Tutankhamun's name, showed no obvious evidence of being carved over another inscription. The glass inlays around the eyes were intact, which seemed to rule out the high-temperature attachment of a replacement face, since such heat would likely have cracked the delicate inlays. The official conclusion was that the mask was original, made for Tutankhamun. The Nefertiti theory was unsupported by physical evidence, but not everyone accepted that conclusion. A small group of materials scientists raised a specific technical objection to the XRF findings. X-ray fluorescence is excellent at detecting surface composition and identifying obvious repairs. What it cannot do is read what happened to metal over time at the atomic level. It cannot distinguish between gold that was cast once and left untouched, and gold that was cast, reheated, hammered, and reworked using material from the same original batch. If the ancient craftsmen who modified the mask were skilled enough, and the evidence of their work elsewhere in Tutankhamun's burial suggests they were extraordinarily skilled, they could have made alterations that were essentially invisible to any technology available until very recently. Plug the pierced ear holes with gold rods from the same alloy batch, polish until seamless. Remove the original face using techniques that left the visible surface undamaged. Attach a new face from the back using localized heating that never touched the front surface or the glass inlays. Hammer the original inscription flat and recarve the new name in its place. To detect this level of modification, you would need technology capable of reading what physicists call the thermal and mechanical history of metal, the way atoms in a piece of gold rearrange themselves differently, depending on whether they have been heated, cooled, hammered, or left at rest. That technology now exists. Advanced materials, imaging methods developed primarily for aerospace and manufacturing applications can detect exactly these kinds of atomic-level rearrangements in metal. When applied to ancient artifacts, they can potentially reveal interventions invisible to conventional scanning. Researchers who have studied the mask's anomalies argue that if such a scan were performed on the cartouche region, the pierced ear locations, and the perimeter where the face meets the headdress, it might show patterns consistent with ancient modification. Whether such detailed scans have been completed, and what any results might show, remains a matter of ongoing scientific and institutional debate. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquity controls access to the mask, and any scan results would need to go through extensive verification before any conclusions could be drawn. But the theoretical case is coherent, and the physical anomalies that started this debate, the pierced ears, the color variation in the gold, the modification evidence on other objects in the tomb, have never been fully explained away. Step back and consider what the evidence, taken as a whole, actually suggests. Tutankhamun died young and unexpectedly. His burial was clearly rushed by the standards of Egyptian royal practice. His tomb was too small, his grave goods showed signs of being gathered from multiple sources, and many objects bore evidence of modified inscriptions. The mask carries physical anomalies consistent with modification, ear holes inconsistent with male royal convention, slight color variations in the gold, and features some researchers describe as more consistent with female portraiture of the period. Nefertiti, the most prominent woman of the preceding generation, ruled as pharaoh under a name directly linked to hers, and then vanished entirely from the historical record. Her tomb has never been found. If the priests responsible for Tutankhamun's burial did take a mask from another royal burial and modify it for their king, the logic points to Nefertiti's tomb as the most likely source. She was royalty. She was the previous ruler. She was gone, either dead or politically erased, and she would have had exactly the kind of burial preparation that Tutankhamun's sudden death had made impossible to complete in time. It would explain the pierced ears, which would be entirely correct for a queen and a woman. It would explain the facial proportions that some researchers describe as more delicate than expected for a male royal portrait. It would explain the gold color variation if the face and headdress came from different original sources, and it would explain why the inscriptions show evidence of reworking that standard conservation analysis alone cannot fully account for. None of this is proven. Egyptology, like all sciences, requires extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, and the mask has not yet been subjected to the full range of modern imaging technologies that might settle the question definitively. The debate is real, it is ongoing, and the establishment has significant reasons, institutional, professional, and historical, to resist conclusions that would require rewriting what we know about one of history's most famous objects. Here is what we know for certain. The Mask of Tutankhamun is one of the most extraordinary objects ever made by human hands. It has survived more than 3,000 years. It has captured the imagination of every civilization that has encountered it since Howard Carter first held up a candle in that sealed chamber in 1922, and it carries questions inside it that still have no clean answers. Why are the ears pierced in a way that violates everything we know about ancient Egyptian royal burial convention? Why does the gold on the face differ subtly from the gold on the headdress? Why does the inscription region show patterns that certain researchers find inconsistent with undisturbed original carving? Why was every other object in that rushed, undersized tomb pulled from somewhere else? And where is Nefertiti? The most powerful woman in the ancient world, a likely pharaoh in her own right, the dominant figure of one of ancient Egypt's most dramatic periods, and she simply disappears. No tomb, no mummy, no confirmed burial, nothing. If she is somewhere in the Valley of the Kings, waiting to be found, the question of what is on her face might turn out to be the most revealing part of the answer. Because if the mask in Cairo was taken from her, then she is out there somewhere without a face. And if she is out there without a face, then the face the world has been staring at for a century doesn't belong to who we think it does. The scan results, whenever they come, will be worth watching. Until then, the gold keeps its secrets. What do you think? Does the evidence point to a cover-up, or does the official story hold up? Drop your take in the comments. If you found this one interesting, hit like and subscribe. There are more stories like this one where the official version and the physical evidence don't quite line up. We'll see you in the next one.